The only thing on the plan is 2 empty lots.
Or you
So
can copy and paste the link.
Yeah, okay.
It's easier if it's already open.
No,
Yeah.
the first one I bought
We'll
is
just have to
right
turn
now,
on
and it was the
volume
neighbors.
speakers, but
There
it's.
were
Yeah.
2 doctors
Diane,
and 7 kids.
is it
and they
draft
bought
or
the
is it
lot
the
next
regular
door,
open
put in
council
some
that
pool and
you draft?
basketball court. And she had all of her nice gardens on that
'Cause it-
lot, and the kids played on this lot. Everybody grew up moved away. So then she sold
Because
that.
we have the
lot.
moved and seconded on them
Swimming
also.
pool.
That's where your name.
That's, no, that's what we bought.
Oh, okay.
And
So you
then-
bought the property in front,
Just
and then
check
you
the
got.
And then I got another
Did you
property
save it?
out back, that neighbor there, the same swimming pool, but they split on half of their lot, and I bought the half of
So
their
you're
lot.
not keeping the pool?
Well, what it is when I redid my backyard, I tore out the original swimming
Nope.
pool and had them dump it in the other swimming
I'll just
pool, fill
open
it
up
up,
the draft one.
and now I'm gonna build a house over there. So I gotta get all that taken.
50, something.
So weird,
Yes.
no shame on the regular.
We weren't here.
Okay,
Um,
that's right.
7 o'clock, so I'm gonna turn on that.
This time.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Town of Lowell regular meeting of council held on January 28th at 7 p.m. Call the meeting to order, and at this time I'd like to ask the CAO if there's any late items to add to the agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have no late items to add on to the agenda.
Hearing that, I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated.
So moved.
Councilor Mattis.
Worship, I'd like to bring something up under water matters, if I could. While we're still,
You wanna add on to the agenda?
yeah,
Okay.
brief discussion. At the end of my report, I'll just have it.
Okay, we have a motion or a second to adopt the agenda. Councilor Schwarzenegger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to adoption of prior minutes. Proposed motion that the minutes of the January 14th, 2019 regular council open meeting be adopted and circulated.
So moved.
So moved, Councilor Schwarzenberg, seconded Councilor Rice. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to committee reports, verbal report from the chairperson of the committee of the whole meeting, Councilor Schwarzenberger. Provide us with the verbal report.
Great, thank you, Your Worship. We had 2 items under water matters. The first was the Gallagher Lake siphon, for which we are applying for disaster mitigation and adoption fund grant from the federal government. And we had a report from our acting CFO on the grant application and the funding that would be required to do our part, and that was that report was brought forward for information only, and it was received. The other item was the strategic planning for 2016 through 2018. It was a 4th quarter update of our strategic priorities, the operation plan, and departmental activities, and that again was received for information. Under delegations, we had Carla Kozakovich, who is the chairperson of the regional district, and she's also the 2nd vice president of SILGA, the Southern Interior Local Government Management Association, and she was here to present a PowerPoint presentation on SILGA, telling us what they do and how they help municipalities in our area. And she also mentioned that this year's conference will be in Penticton, so that's the closest it's ever been, or will ever be. Under business, we had a zoning review, or discussions on allowing cannabis production facilities in the M1 general industrial zone. And we asked that, we directed staff to prepare a zoning bylaw amendment to permit cannabis production facilities in the M1 zone. The next item of business was a review of projections into required setbacks in zoning bylaw 1380. Our contract planner had his report, and council directed staff to initiate an amendment to zoning bylaw 1380 in order to update section 6.4, which is projections into required setbacks. And the last item, we had a report from the Director of Operations on the public feedback that was given at the traffic calming and New Park open house that was fairly well attended, and that report was received for information. And that is my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. The next item on the agenda is the minutes from the December 10th, 2018 committee of the whole meeting. I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt the minutes from the December 10th, 2018 committee of the whole.
So moved.
Councillor Rice, seconded. Councillor Mattis, further discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item under committee reports is the minutes from the January 14th, 2018 committee of the whole meeting. I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt those minutes from January 14th. Councillor Bentamina, Councillor Schwarzenberger, any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to water matters. There is no water matters, so we'll move right into the reports from water councillors. Councillor Michelle.
Your Worship, I came in for part of that second leg of that strategic planning meeting, and then the meeting this afternoon, and I'll wait for Councillor Sadhu's report, and I've got something else I want to talk about.
Councillor Stu.
I have nothing to report this week.
Councillor Michelle.
Yes, Your Worship, just want to talk a bit more about how the water councillors sit on council. I think I mentioned it a couple of times. I mentioned it at a regular meeting, and I mentioned it again at our first strategic planning meeting, that I thought that council should revisit that. And getting nothing back from council, I think that I'd like to initiate that. I'd like to do that tonight. I'd like to make a motion. I don't know if I'm going to get a second or not, but I'd like to move that council reverse the decision of the previous council pertaining to the participation of water councillors during council meetings, period.
Have a seconder? Councillor Stu. Any discussion?
Your Worship, I think that if you guys want us to be part of this team, I think that we have to sit as council, at council. It's an uncomfortable feeling. It's almost like being bullied, to be quite honest with you. I think that for 28 years we sat here and there was never a challenge from any member of the public. We never voted on any issue. We knew exactly where we stood as water councillors. I know that in the discussions that led to the decision, it was suggested that Asias did it differently than Oliver, that they didn't sit there. Well, I found out that they did exactly the way Oliver did. They just didn't have water councillors that were interested in sticking around. I talked to both water councillors, one that were on there for many years, and if there was something on the agenda that they felt that they would like to stick around, they were welcome to, and even to this day, they're welcome to stick around. I think that there's no harm in it, and if council is worried about the decision from that lawyer, from the legal opinion, then there's a provision in the community charter that would allow that to happen. I think that continuing the way we're going is not going to be conducive to having cooperation. We've got some big decisions to make as a council going forward that are big numbers. We looked at them this afternoon. You know, we need to be part of that, part of the whole council, feel like we're part of the whole council. Not only that, just to have to peruse the agendas to see if there's any water matters. I mean, the last council meeting that we had, it was irrelevant anyway. We would have voted for it, but council did vote for an interim CFO. I think the water council should be allowed to vote on that unless there's no wages coming out of the water fund for his participation at this point. You know, I don't think that we should have to sit here and wonder if there's discussions going on. You know, with Andre and I, all those years on council, it was kind of like a tag team. Andre would come to the committee meetings, and I'm busy with my business and my orchards, and quite often if there was a water matter, I'd come to the committee meetings, but I didn't. But I always stuck around after, you know, and it was like he was there earlier and I was there. Quite often discussions would come up where it was a water matter, and then, you know, we pointed out and we'd have our input. You know, I think if we're not here, then I just don't think it's gonna be very conducive for 4 years to sit through this. So, I mean, there's a way to do it. If you guys can do it, then it'll be very positive for our community. I mean, we don't live in the rural area, we live in the town of Oliver. You know, when I address where I live, I don't live in area RDOS. You know, I live in area C, I live in the town of Oliver. And we've got, you know, I mean, like I say, we never voted. Andre and I knew our roles. We didn't vote. If we were asked an opinion, we'd give it. Sometimes over the years, we gave it without asking because maybe we took a bit too much liberty. But if this council doesn't think that should happen, well, that's fine. But I think that to actually ask us to leave, you know, and I specifically asked the 2 water councillors in Vesuvius, because that was part of the argument, that they didn't stick around, they weren't allowed to stick around. They said, absolutely not, we are allowed to stick around. And I talked to Claude Barrera today. He's still on council, he's been for many years. He actually said that recently they were asking, why are you guys always leaving? Why don't you stick around? You know, that's the kind of, you know, that's the kind of attitude that we should have. We're adults, we're not children. You know, I didn't like getting bullied in elementary school, and I don't like getting bullied now. And I think council needs to resolve this, because, you know, sooner rather than later. That's all I'd like to say.
Thanks for your comments, Councillor Michelle. CEO, I see you had some comments.
With respect to the item regarding the interim CFO, it was an appointment as an officer for the town of Oliver. It had nothing to do with his wage. It was to undertake the duties of the community charter. So that's why it was not under a water matter item.
But it still makes no sense that we've got to sit here wondering, you know, I mean,
We're not.
there's nothing, it's only positive to have us here, you know, not negative.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
I was just gonna say that, council has had a couple of discussions about this, and we left it, unfinished, and I would like to finish those discussions, and so I wouldn't vote to go forward at this time. But you can be sure that we're gonna finish those discussions and have a full vote similar to what you're asking for.
Anybody else?
I would say the same as Councilor Schwarzenberger. In closed meetings, we've been having a discussion around this topic, but the discussions at this point are unfinished. So at this point, I would not be prepared to support or deny your motion, just on the basis of we haven't finished those discussions to find out what the best route forward for this council is.
But once again, Your Worship, if you're having discussions revolving this issue, then we should be at the table. I don't understand how you can be having discussions about this and not have us at the table and allow us to give our opinions on it. I just don't, I can't fathom that. I mean, we're the water councillors. You know, we're elected. We're not just sitting here hunky-dory. I mean, Andre and I got a point, you know, basically by acclamation all those years because there wasn't much interest. You know, there was a lot of interest this time. I was elected, Harm was elected. So we're elected to sit here. You know, I don't think you should be having discussions without us present. I mean, if you want to continue with the past and you just end up going in that route, then that's fine. But I'm just saying that it would be a lot more conducive to cooperation and to getting along and to being a team if we go back to the way we were. And if you're worried about it, there's a provision in the community charter that allows that. You can just simply make a statement at the start of every meeting if you're worried about being challenged. In 28 years, there was never a challenge. Nobody ever said, you know, they've influenced discussion. They shouldn't be there. You know, I mean, I just can't imagine what it's about. And I'm just, from my perspective, giving you how I feel. You know, I think that, anyway, that's all I've got to say. I think that if you're having discussions about that, we should be included.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle. I think council is well aware of your opinion on the matter and your feelings on the matter. A decision was made by the previous council that has made it so that the water councillors are only invited to sit at the table regarding water matters. And so we have, as Councillor Schwarzenberger and Councillor Mattis have indicated, we have had some discussions on that. And we're trying to wrap our head around, do we want to continue with what was decided by the previous council, or do we want to modify that in any way, shape, or form? I don't think those discussions really need to have the water councillors out there, because the decision's already been made about what is today the decision for the water councillors to only be involved in water matters. I think once we have that discussion with the existing council here, then we will share our opinion with you about what we think we would like to continue with. And that can be from continuing with the decision that was made with the previous council, or something in between, or actually asking water councillors to return to the council table. I think it would be appropriate for you to understand that and let us have those conversations.
Could I ask why they're in camera? Why aren't they in public? Under what provision is that in camera? There are certain rules that are set out for camera discussions that, under what provision would that be in camera meeting? Why wouldn't that be held in public?
I don't have an answer for you on that, Councillor Michelle. Why would?
I'm looking at the,
There's certain rules and regulations
Community
that set out
charter
what's
right now.
discussed in camera.
Legal, labor.
I guess it would be legal, yeah.
legal, it was a solicitor client.
Discussion.
We had a legal opinion.
Yeah, it's not public anyways.
We never made it
We've
public.
never.
We never.
No, I know, but I don't know who released it, but it's public, so I. It's in the public, it's in the public domain.
But it's still not, we haven't released it in public, so we have to continue to treat it as though it's private.
So when could we expect a decision? When are you guys gonna do that?
Well, if I was to throw a date out there, I would say we would have a decision within, what's the next council meeting, February the 11th?
2 weeks?
So probably, I would say 4 weeks. We'd have a discussion at our next closed meeting, and we'd have a discussion with you guys, with the water councillors at that time, about what council has made a decision on how to proceed.
Okay, so how do we proceed? Because we have a motion on the table. I mean, you guys wanna table it, you wanna postpone it, what do you wanna do?
Well, you made the motion, so.
Well, I've made the motion.
It's moved and seconded.
It's now,
vote. Sorry, just a procedural question, because I don't actually know. Can we actually vote on a motion that's like a motion that's just thrown on that wasn't part of the agenda, or isn't that something
Yeah,
that
you
we wait
can.
for 2 weeks at whole process?
it wasn't a notice of motion, he just put the motion out there
You're not doing.
and got a seconder on it.
It could be tabled, or you could
Or
rescind
we can
it.
vote on it at this point, and it can come back another day, whatever.
I just wanna say something as well, because I've said it to you in private, Councilor Michelle, and I've said it to others, that I appreciate you saying what you've said tonight. I wouldn't support this motion tonight, because I think there's more conversations to have, but in general, I agree with, your view that things are a bit uncomfortable the way that they are now, and that there's definitely a better way to do things. I just wanted to say that, because I feel like it needs to be said.
That's fine. Then maybe what we should do is postpone this motion until we get back from council. I think I'd live with that.
You withdrawing it, or?
Well, not.
No, it's been moved and seconded, it's now on the table,
Has to be
it's
dealt with.
everybody's
Well, you can
motion
move to
at this
table.
point in time.
It's, anybody can move to table.
I will make a friendly amendment if Councillor Michelle is, no, can't do that?
No,
So
we
You
can
can
vote
move to
or
table a
postpone.
motion. You can table a motion.
you can either move, you
Yeah,
can
I would
either
like
move
to
to
add- I would
postpone
like
it,
to
or you can
make a
vote on
friendly
it.
Okay, move to
friendly
postpone.
amendment that motion have a date on it for February 11th.
No, I think she said we couldn't do that, but she just said that we could postpone it.
4 weeks.
Is it the mover that postpones it? or-
No, it's anybody at the table can postpone.
So anybody at the table can move to postpone it?
Yes.
So that's the legal, that's.
Okay, I move to postpone for 4 weeks. Up to 4 weeks.
For council consideration. seconder?
Oh, the second one, sorry.
Councilor Renton. Any further discussion before we?
There's no discussion on the postponement?
No.
No discussion, okay. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes our items for this evening. We have 2 delegations this evening. The first is from Julie Foster to provide a presentation regarding Harvest Hut. Ms. Foster presented the Food Action Advisory Committee. We welcome you up. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you for having me.
Right one? Yeah, this one, I need to move it up.
Just figuring out the technology.
Do you want to move it back a couple screens?
Yeah, I think there's 2 more slides. Or maybe just one. I can move it.
Is the thing
I
pushed in?
I can't, I'm gonna start, oh, I'm way over there. That's why.
I always test the technology first and it never works.
This is-
I
I
can
was
have
gonna say it
it
never works, they can test it.
Even if you sorry for that.
This actually almost.
From beginning.
Is it brown? Is this?
That
It's
one's
hers.
mine, but you can take it out.
She doesn't
Then you need it. Sorry,
Now you should have control on the. That's weird.
There, it just moved here.
Okay, but not on the screen.
Well, I'm waiting, I can introduce myself. So thank you very much for having me here tonight to share. It's an honor. So my name is Julie Forster. I've lived here in Oliver for almost 6 years. I grew up in the North Okanagan and my background is in biology and elementary education, and also worked in community environmental education for a while. Right now I'm currently a full-time volunteer with Youth with a Mission Global Gateway here in Oliver and have been doing that for the past 6 years. So I'm here to share about Food Harvest Hut, and that comes out of my background. So I grew up in the North Okanagan in the community of Enderby, and through just staying in touch, my family still lives there. I found out about an initiative that's been going on in Enderby for the last 5 years called the Harvest Sharing Hut. So hopefully you can figure out.
I think I've got it here too.
I think you have access to my
We do.
notes.
We have it.
So we can move forward. So if you're looking at the diagram, I think the second slide should show
You can do it.
a diagram of a harvest sharing hut. So basically the model of the harvest sharing hut is that we share what we have and take what you need. So what happens is that local people and local farmers bring excess fruits and vegetables to a specific time and location called the harvest sharing hut, where a volunteer would receive that food and then where a volunteer would receive that food and weigh it, and then it would be available for other people in the community to come and take free of charge. And when they would receive the food, then those people just give some basic information to the volunteers of their age bracket. So that's what data is collected by this, just so that they have an idea of who's accessing the service. So they would just say, how many people are going to be using this food? Are they seniors? Are they children? Are they adults? How many people? So that's basically how the Harvest Hut is functioning in Enderby right now. So we'll just flip to a video, if that's possible. It's on the other screen, sorry.
I'm just going to maybe control it.
So basically what the video is, it's a video by Go News that shows the Harvest Hut in action in Enderby. It's from 2016, which was the second year that the Harvest Hut was operating in Enderby.
Yeah, just a second. There we go.
Tested this before too.
Is it showing now? But it's not showing.
I think you have to close the PowerPoint and then drag it into the screen.
Okay. Close the PowerPoint.
Like just
This
exit,
is just not very good.
exit PowerPoint, and then drag that screen over.
Yeah, I'm just thinking I might just do it from here. Oh,
Yeah, so then go to the,
Close this.
Chrome, it's in Chrome.
no, in the Chrome, and then just drag this window to
All the
this-
way over there.
Oh, but now that's back, so I don't know. Is it okay if I touch it?
Sure. You most definitely can.
I just practiced before, so.
I'll just sit over here.
What do you two?
We all hit play at exactly the same time on our iPhones.
I got it. It's right there.
There we go.
Practiced before, so.
That's me.
That's me
That's
talking.
us talking. Here's the sound of that.
It's all part of, we have kale, scapes, dill, bags of fresh produce, free to whomever needs them, dropped off by people and businesses who have extra. It's all part of a food sharing program in downtown Enderby.
Enderby Community Harvest Hut was an initiative by the FACT Committee, which stands for Food Action Committee for Today and Tomorrow. And the FACT Committee wants to work on projects that are about food sustainability and food accessibility. And so we needed a project, we needed something that was doable for the small.
2015 was the inaugural year for the program, and organizers decided to get it back up and running after summer success.
Last year there was great buzz about this. People were happy when they came to the volunteers, loved it, and so it's a real community that was doable for them.
I planted my garden, I got a little carried away, planting stuff, and,
That's not gonna work.
No,
No.
not touching it.
I don't know if you wanna give a commentary, Julie, cause it's feeding back from our webcast.
Okay, so basically he's saying he really enjoys getting things like cantaloupes and new zucchinis. They're a real treat. He's a participant. This is a lady who lives in Enderby, and she said, it's the quote that's in the slide. Basically, you know that there are people in your community who have needs, but you don't always know who those people are. And so this is Marianne. She's a public health nurse in Enderby, and she's part of their Food Action Committee and was part of the organizing group. This is one of the volunteers. Her name is Carrie Lynn. I also spoke with her in my preparations. She says it's a great atmosphere, I'm trying to remember exactly, but basically she has had a really positive experience, and then it's also been a place where people are sharing recipes and sharing ideas, and it's about building community, not just about getting food to eat. And Angie is another volunteer. I've not met with her personally, but she also said it was a great experience and she really enjoys volunteering with the Harvest Hut. So I think what they're saying now is that the Harvest Hut is open on Mondays from June till October, and during that time people are welcome to come from 9 to 12 in the morning at that location.
Here, I'll cancel it.
Okay. So back to my presentation.
Hopefully.
So basically, it's been a really positive experience for the people of Enderby to be a part of. And speaking with one, I've also been in contact with one of the city councilors. Her name is Raquel Must, and she's been part of the project right from the get-go. So she said it's been about 7 years in the making. And she said it's been an easy win for the city, no burden. It's been a huge success, and there were little funds needed, so really positive experience for her from a council perspective. So at the beginning, for the first 3 years that it was operating, it was fully volunteer run. Now there's one paid coordinator who works 5 days a week. So just an example of what's been happening in the past year. In 2018, during their season, almost 2,000 people accessed the Harvest Hut, and over 3,000 kilograms of food was shared through this initiative. So it's really exciting numbers. Their community is about 3,000 people, so a little bit smaller than Oliver, but still rural area with a regional district surrounding. So that's a little bit more. I'm happy to answer some questions. I forgot to turn on my timer, so I don't know how long I have left, but I'll just keep going. So as far as what would a harvest hut bring to Oliver, what are goals that I think would be accomplished, or I would hope. So the first goal is to increase access to healthy local food. And this would be one of the target groups of the Enderby Harvest Hut. I think is very relevant to Oliver. They see an increase in seniors who are accessing food from the hut. So maybe seniors who haven't been able to plant a garden. They used to in the past, but for whatever reason they can't. So it's a way for them to access healthy food that maybe they wouldn't be going to the food bank to receive. The second is to reduce food waste. So all of the food that's going through the Harvest Hut in Enderby is food that would not have been used otherwise. So food that's coming from the local farmers market is food that wouldn't be sold. And then food that's grown in people's gardens is more than they can use. So for example, my mom planted spinach. The spinach went nuts. It was going really well. There was more than she and my dad could consume. So they brought it to the Harvest Hut. And while they were there, they saw there were some cherries. They don't have a cherry tree, so they were able to share and receive. So some people, Marianne had mentioned, they'll come every week. They're frequently using the service, whereas other people will just come occasionally. Oh, and I missed the last one. The third goal is building community. So it's a place where people come together and connect. Another neat result that Marianne, the public health nurse, mentioned is that some of the volunteers said that some of the people who were coming to use the hut, there was some discomfort. You see people in town and you don't really know them and you kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable, but through their interactions in the Harvest Hut, there was that discomfort sort of left as they built relationship on a more personal level. So I think that's a really great side effect of just coming together and sharing what we've got. I think there's a lot of potential to evolve. So as was mentioned by Councillor Muse in Enderby, it's a very simple project to begin. It was the first project that their Food Action Committee for Today and Tomorrow started in Enderby. So it's a simple thing, but it has a lot of potential to grow into different areas. For example, cooking classes. So when you get those zucchinis that are oh so plentiful at certain times of the summer, what do I do with a zucchini? So you can exchange recipes or forward on to, actually there's a community cooking class and this week they're talking about some ways to use zucchini. Or at certain times of the year, I know we get an excess of apricots and I didn't know how to make jam. So can you connect seniors in the community who maybe don't have the ability to jam and make the jam all by themselves with people who want to learn and have that be a place to share knowledge and also to build community. Offering coffee and snacks, so maybe partnering with local cafes to encourage people not just to come and drop off food and leave right away, but to just stay and build community. A hamper program for people who may need the food but they can't physically come to the hut, so that's another offshoot program that's possible. A gleaning service. I know this is something that the Food Action Committee here in Oliver is exploring the options of plant sharing. So this has also happened in Enderby at the beginning of the year when you've got those tomatoes that you're trying to get started and you plant so many and they just take off. You can't plant them all, so bring your extra seedlings to the Harvest Hut and maybe somebody who didn't have time to start them would be really grateful to receive them, and bring some of the tomatoes to the Harvest Hut later in the summer. Food info hub, so just a place to come and find out information about how can you get food in Oliver, how do you grow food. A community gardening center, so exchanging information not just about the food itself, but how do you grow it, or if there's a community garden here in Oliver, a place to bring that food to share with the community. And just a way to celebrate different seasons of the harvest. So a lot of different ways that it can expand and be more than this simple beginning, depending on where those who are organizing it and where the community wants it to go. So hopefully I have sold you on the idea by now, and your question is, well, what would we need to do to start one of these in Oliver? So there's 5 basic startup needs that I've learned from my communications with those who are working with the hut in Enderby. The first is a space to operate out of. The second is produce. The third, volunteers. So right now they're operating, last year I think they had 6 volunteers for the whole summer. The fourth is some basic supplies, and fifth is promotion, so getting the word out. And that was a key key ingredient for success in Enderby. So I'll leave it at that because I'm sure I've gone over my 10 minutes, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Your Worship. Julie, is this a one-day turnaround thing that doesn't need refrigeration or stuff like that, or is it more complicated than
So the goal with theirs, which is what Councillor News had told me, is that there's no storage after the day of. So one of the needs with the produce is to find a source to pass that food on if there is an excess. So they partnered with the local First Nations band, the Slatson band, and I think so that's for edible things that are left over. If there are things that are inedible, they partnered with a local pig farmer so that they can be passed on. I think there's definitely opportunities that could be used here in Oliver, depending on the dates chosen. The food bank offers extra produce outside the food bank during the summertime, so that could be moved on. They do have some refrigeration because they also partner with their farmers market. So the farmers market in Enderby is on Friday mornings, and the Harvest Hut is on Monday mornings. So they have bins that they've gotten from a local bakery. They bring them to different vendors at the farmers market, and if they are interested in donating what's left over at the end of the market, they can put it in the bin. It's collected by the coordinator at the end of the farmers market, and the vendors will explain to her how to store it best over the weekend, and then that's the first things that are put out on Monday mornings. They do have statistics about how much food is coming from that source versus the whole, and it is a smaller percentage, so that's the only storage that's required.
Thank you, Councilor Price.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for the presentation, Julie. I love to see initiatives like this. Is Enderby the first and only model right now, or are there others as well?
Actually, when I was speaking with the public health nurse who had sort of started the ball rolling in Enderby, she said there's also one in Armstrong, and that was where she got the idea, but I don't know if it's had as much publicity. Because I'm not from there, I haven't inquired. I'm sure there are other similar food sharing programs. I know I saw a video you see on the internet that they have, it's like a food cupboard in some communities in Auckland in New Zealand. So basically just like a bookshelf that people can come and bring food to and share from there. So much more informal than this.
And my other question, thank you, is do you know if they've partnered with grocery stores at all?
Not to my knowledge, mostly going straight to farmers and then local residents. So it is local food that they are sharing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Benton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for your presentation. I think that, unfortunately I missed the food action meeting that you presented at, obviously. It's the first time I've seen it. But in seeing it, it totally hits on one of the things that was identified during the sort of planning process of the last couple of years is that even during the summer months, even during our total peak season, it's hard to access local produce in our community. There's lots of food stands on the periphery, but if you don't have access to a vehicle, that's just not within your reach, and it's a couple kilometers out on the highway. So something like this seems like kind of, the councillor Nendery said it, kind of an easy win right off the bat. So my question would be then, from that conversation that you had with the Food Action Committee, where did they see it going? Like, there's no dollar amount attached to the startup needs, but I'm wondering if it was something that possibly could be funded through the Food Action Committee, or are we asking for additional funds from council?
So
Potentially to the corporate officer.
The meeting that I was part of had left it with a potential grant that they were looking at, so I don't know if probably.
Your Worship, I'm not aware of a grant at this time, but the Food Action Advisory Committee had wished to bring a recommendation to council for council to consider a Harvest Hut. That was the reason why it's coming to the meeting this evening.
Okay.
Was that for council to hear it, because the Food Action Advisory Committee has heard it. They were supportive of the concept, but knowing that they would need to work with the town of Oliver and possibly even Oliver Parks and Recreation for a location, and then determining who the volunteers may be and how it may be, rolled out.
So, sorry, for clarification then, we're just looking for support here, but not necessarily additional funds?
I don't think we had identified any dollar amount.
Just the initial money for the Harvest Hut in Enderby came from, that was something that was shared with me from the counselor in Enderby. And she said that it came from win from Fortis from a UBCM conference. I don't know what that means, but you probably do better than me. And then the other part was a partnership with their local credit union. So there's Enderby and District Credit Union partnered with their Food Action Committee. And then they also currently, so the one paid staff, she's paid through the Family Resource Center in Enderby, which is a local nonprofit that receives donations from a number of different sources, which can be found on their website. I believe, I think I put that on your handout, but yeah. So if you look on the handout that I gave you, which is separate, is a PDF document, down below the current thing, it says the one paid staff is paid through the Enderby and District Community Resource Center. So if you're curious about where they get their funds, there's a number of different individuals and businesses, and I think the city also is part of it. One thing that the city provided in Enderby was access to power. So they have a fridge for that weekend over. So the city gave them access to a parking spot because they're operating out of a parking lot in Enderby.
Does council wish to propose a motion to direct staff to bring back more information back to council on establishing a Harvest Hut that may include?
Well, to me, I'm sorry.
This is more of a function of the Food Action Committee to bring forward.
I was just going to suggest that perhaps we, the council, refer it back to the Food Action Committee to investigate possible funding opportunities through different organizations in the community and provide a direction for council to determine if it can be supported. That's not me making the motion, but.
Just getting ideas.
Well, I'm just suggesting that we have a member of the Food Action Committee here that can take that message back. They should be pursuing it and bringing the direction to council.
I wonder if the direction even needs to come back to council, if council supports the concept and it can be sort of figured out through the Food Action Committee logistics. Is it something that needs to come back to us if we were to be able to support the concept right now? It would only come back to us if additional money was attached to it. I don't know, I'm asking.
Of course we support the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
CEO?
Thank you, Worship. I would suggest that once it has been determined exactly what's going to happen or where you want to locate it, if it's, it should come back to council for endorsement of it being, if it's on our property anywhere within the town.
Okay.
And also if they need electricity to be able to provide that to, if that's the case, but it should come back to council for an endorsement of the recommendation from the Food Action Committee.
We can't see the proposed motion, that's the only problem.
So we do have a motion. Council refer back to the Food Action Committee through its advisory committee representative to have the Food Action Advisory Committee investigate funding opportunities through the community and provide a direction from council for consideration.
And direction to council for consideration, I would move the proposed motion.
Second.
Second.
Councilor Grice, any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Forster.
Thank you.
Second presentation on the agenda is over budget presentation. presentation
I
from
can't
John
access it through
Kirby,
that.
Manager of Finance, CFO, Regional District of the Okanagan Similkameen. Come on up.
Mr. Kermig, I'll operate the PowerPoint here. We're having trouble with that laptop this morning, so, or this evening, just wave to me and I'll flip it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council and staff for having me here. Happy to present the Regional District Okanagan Similkameen budget to you. Go to the next slide. Don't have a lot of slides to go through, so hopefully it won't be too laborious of a task. Anyhow, the regional district, just a little bit of background, which you probably are well aware of all this, different than a municipality. We don't have one budget, we have 143 budgets this year, and all our budgets are in a separate silo, and the money stays within the silo. We requisition for a silo. We can't move money from one thing to another. We can't carry a deficit. Every year, the deficit, if there's a deficit, it has to be recovered in the subsequent year. So a little bit more complicated and restrictive that way in terms of flexibility. Every service is self-sustaining, so on to the next one here. So our budget process started back in August, and we're coming to the culmination of it. So we started with developing baseline budgets, which were really operating the services that we have established, and then applying inflation increase if we have contractual increases with our unions or other, applying those, and building a budget from there, and that's our starting point. From there, then we apply capital requests and program change requests, which are really anything that changes the budget from the baseline. There's a committee of the board that reviews the budget. We had a series of 3 workshops where they went through the budget. This is after the budget's developed by staff and were vetted through the internal organization, then it went to the budget committee. And through their workshops, made a number of changes from that, ending with first reading of the budget on January the 3rd. And now we're in the community consultation phase, and really the budget, by law, we have to have our budget passed by March 31st. So we have first reading, we have 2 more readings to go, so really the budget can be revised anytime up to 3rd reading. And we have that scheduled, I think, for March the 7th. I might be off on that, but early March anyway. Go to the next one. So types of the services, in terms of Town of Oliver, it's a little bit different than some of the presentations I've done, one up in Summerland last week. So regional services are the services that cross all the 9 electoral areas in 6 municipalities. Some examples are the 911 system, emergency planning. Everyone contributes to those. Then we have rural services, which are really the services that apply to the 9 electoral areas. And only those areas contribute to that. The regional municipalities don't contribute to that. And then, of course, going to the next slide, we have local services and shared services. So the situation is unique with Oliver. We have a number of shared services that cross between our electoral area C and Oliver. And I've given some of the examples there, which are the Parks and Rec, economic development, the auditorium, and garbage refuse. Local services are more the ones that apply to the electoral areas with a local geographic area, which are fire protection and water service are the 2 main ones. So a specific population within an electoral area contributes to it and gets the service delivered to them. On to the next one. So in terms of the 2019 requisition, what affected that other than the base requisition, of course, from the RDOS, but property assessments. So Oliver, based on the information we had from BC Assessment, is 4.7% of the total assessed value in the region, gone up from 4.67%. So in the case of Oliver, all things being equal, that means that because the regional district budget really ends up being a pie or a number of pies that are sliced according to whatever basis the service was established, and the majority of our services are land and improvements. So as land and improvements vary, the slice of the pie you get allocated varies. So in this case, your assessments went up relative to everyone else, which means you would pay a little bit more for the same service relative to your neighbor just because your assessments went up, which is a good thing as a homeowner, not so good as a taxpayer sometimes, and it changes every year. So your assessments, as you probably have gone through this, I'm sure, but have gone up 11.47%, which is more than the RUS average of 9.29%, which is the increase across all of the electoral areas plus the municipalities. The electoral areas went up 9.12%, so as I say, you'll bear more of the overall tax burden for regional services. So the next slide just goes through, and really it's just a laundry list of all the program change requests and capital requests. I think I've got the grants on there. And when you look at that slide, you'll see the list of program changes. Not all of those changes apply to Oliver. It would only apply to the services that you participate in, which would be regional services, or if it was a shared service with Area C, which I don't think there's any examples of that. We can go on to the next slide. So these are the program change requests. The total impact to the requisition, the whole requisition, not Oliver's requisition, is $361,000 for 2019. And so you can see the water services wouldn't apply because we don't have a water service with you, but general government would, information services would to a degree. So a lot of those don't apply, but they're just for completeness of showing you the whole budget. It's to give you the full picture. We go on to the next slide. And the same thing with the capital requests. If there were capital requests that applied to Oliver, those would be, you wonder, well, how are you paying for it? There's, be it reserves or borrowing or tax requisition or grants. But in this case, most of these services are all paid out of reserve, and some of them don't apply to Oliver at all, but they're, as I said, in the interest of completeness, you can see that we're buying some equipment for Keremeus Fire Department, so clearly that only applies to Keremeus and Area B and G, who all participate in the fire service. Next are the grant request summaries. So these are regional grants that we receive applications during the budget, and the board decides which of these not-for-profits they fund. They provide, there's a number of criteria that dictate who can apply for funding. It has to be a not-for-profit, can't be used for compensation. We only give the grant 1 year at a time. So some have applied for multiple years, but they only get 1 year and it's revisited every year. So you can see the grants that just came across, just the South Okanagan Community Foundation, some for the Bighorn Air Cadet Academy, which isn't too far north of here. The Kwantlen is a food, speaking of food security, Kwantlen was a food security project that this is year 2 of the study. So year 1 we funded last year, and this is the second year of that. And then we have contributed to the Film Commission, which its aim is to bring film production to the Okanagan Valley or the South Valley and help with economic development. So this is the total budget for the regional district. Number of pieces to it. You can see the budget's going down overall 14.7%, but that's misleading in the sense of our operating costs are actually going up 11.3%. The debt's going down on the municipal side. We manage the debt for all municipalities, and that's just by virtue of the legislation. What they told me was that the reason they did that was to make it onerous for a municipality to default on debt, because they'd have all their other fellow municipalities and electoral areas all hounding them to make good on their obligations, and that's the reason the government tied all the municipalities into the regional district to kind of make we have to all share the burden. And the OSRHD is the hospital district, and you can see there's a big drop in its operating hit because of the tower being completed. So here's how the requisition shakes down. This information is a bit different than the letter that I sent, because we were able to get the Penticton Indian Band assessments came through to us, and so that they're a participant in the regional district, so it changed the requisitions a bit, but the numbers are fairly close. So you can see where Oliver, we show your requisition going down this year, the only one actually decreasing besides Keremeus, so down by 3.16%. And you can see your share of the pie has dropped as well. Oh, we can go on to the next one, that's fine. The next slide just shows the requisition as it applies to Oliver. Total contribution is 1.4 million, including the parcel tax, so you have to add the two amounts to get the numbers to agree. But your total requisition this year reduced actually by 48,000. And this is the hard on the eye slide. Hard to know how to get these slides into 32-point font so you can easily read them, but you've seen the detail on that. So you can see the regional services at the top, the services that are shared with Area C, and then the services that come to us via the other boards. Go on to the next slide. So the budget items in terms of, this is the impact on the Oliver requisition. So emergency services went up 3,961. That's really, the Central Okanagan manages the dispatch service, and it's really their costs that have increased to us. Emergency planning's gone up. That's become a bigger issue over the last couple of years with the fires and the floods, and that's the result of increased equipment, education. ESS is emergency support services, so that's another aspect of emergency planning, and that's really the piece where they have to evacuate folks and house them and look after their needs. General government's gone up, and really the costs haven't changed that much year to year, but what it is the deficit or the surplus that you had in a year is smaller this year than what was carried forward last year, and therefore if it's smaller, the taxes go up to make up the difference, to make the numbers balance. Regional Transit is a new service, which is the bus service going to Kelowna. Solid Waste Management's in going up 1660. Once again, lower transfer from operating reserve. So that just, where we had money in reserve, last year they made the conscious decision to draw down some of that money, some of the operating reserve, to lower the tax requisition. That's always an option to board or council where you have the money in reserve, but that decision hasn't been made this year, and so the requisition, all things being equal, ends up going up. South Okanagan Transit went up quite significantly, and that's the Friday service that they're implementing and spare bus expansion. So that's tied to increases in service delivery for the area. In terms of the shared budget, the Parks and Rec is decreasing 87,885, and that's really, they've done a lot. They've bumped up some of the revenue numbers and certainly reduced some of their expenditures. And that budget, will be revised again, because I understand they found some additional revenue or some changes. So I'm meeting with Carol on Thursday, and we'll see. That'll go into the next iteration of the budget, but there's been some changes with that. The Heritage Grant has gone up, and that's a requisition that we get from the Heritage Society. I know I brought the Parks and Rec budget with me in the Heritage letter. It's really just a letter saying this is our budget for what we deliver, but I'm sure they come here to present as well, perhaps. No? Next year. That's the date that we have in September, right? That's on my calendar. The Frank Venables Theater, same thing. They give us a budget, and that's really the budget that I put into the system, but certainly they've got plans for behind that increase. Now we can go on to the next one. So what I did was a slide, just out of interest. The average house in Oliver, the assessment is $357,501. So the average tax bill related to the regional district, notwithstanding the hospital piece, but is $471 for a property valued at $357. So I broke the pie up just so you could see, where all your money's going in terms of the requisitions. You can see out of that 471, 265 goes to, which is over half, goes to Oliver Parks and Rec. So a big piece of the requisition on an average tax bill is Parks and Rec. You can see the regional service makes up $71. Some of the other ones, just looking at the colors here, the multi-regional board is 18, The auditorium is 66, the Frank Venables Auditorium. So it's just to kind of give you, because sometimes it's interesting to say, well, how does the pie shake up in terms of what we're getting? So now we can go on to the hospital district budget. So Petra probably, Councillor, would know a lot more about this budget, being the chair of the board, but the same board as the RDOS, but different entity. What it's large, the major purpose under legislation is to provide funding for construction for equipment. There's also purposes under the legislation for operating and maintenance, which I always bring up, but not a lot of the regional districts have been involved in that, but some have. So there's different, different regions have been creative in terms of how they work with their hospital board. But typically in our area, we fund 40%, the province funds 60%. Their budget for 2019 is $20,164,000. We go on to the next one. So the big accomplishment, which you're all well aware of, is the new tower in Penticton. So our contribution to that was $117 million, which is quite significant. We funded that 58% from debt and the remainder from reserves. So it was nice to have that mix. It achieved substantial completion in December. We hope to have it, the patients moving in late spring. I guess we're on the 100-day countdown now.
April 29th.
Yeah, so I can't wait to get in for a tour, which they promised. The rest of the project, because it's not over with, will be renovations of existing areas of the hospital that they're trying to bring up to speed. They expect the completion of that is 2020. The other capital equipment is $5.9 million. That's made up with about $1.3 million in new asks, and the balance is really carry forward from things they've asked in prior years, but the health authority hasn't gotten around to buying it, and that makes a lot of sense in the sense that they have to do a lot of clinical trials. They have to bring the physicians in with a lot of equipment, so it sometimes is a lot slower than what probably a municipality or electoral area would spend the money. Usually there's a lot quicker spend, but they have to take their time and do it a little bit more thorough. So there's a bit of a lag on spending that money, but it will be spent, and it's allocated for them, and it just keeps carrying forward. So it's not something that we can claw back and say, well, gee, you didn't spend it, like some of the the funds we receive sometimes. If you don't do it, the money's got strings attached. So this is the overall budget. You can see out of the 20 million, 6.4 million comes from tax requisitions. We're borrowing 8.9 million, and you can see that's down from 25, and that's because the tower is largely complete. That's really what the debt program was for. And transfer from reserves is just money that we have that's going in to offset that budget. A lot of the costs really are debt repayment, but the big piece of it is really the patient care tower and capital grants, which is equipment. There's not a lot else that goes on in the hospital district other than really funding interior health's needs. I know they asked a good question when they had interior health at our board. One of the board members asked, they said, well, if you had to remove something from the budget, what would you remove? And they really didn't answer that question. They didn't have an answer. So, but it was good the question was asked, because it probably made them go away and think, well, gee, we better start, if they put that in writing, we better have an answer for them. But you're sitting at 4.76% of the assessed values, so the same rationale, you pay 4.76% of the budget. So you're contributing $307,191, which is $9,000 more than in 2018. And that goes back to the average residential property at $357,509. So your the tax piece of that pie would be $94, which is the same as the year before. But you can see we've given the mill rate for the hospital district. So you can take your assessed value from BC assessment, divide by 1,000, multiply by 0.26352, and you will get the taxes that you pay towards the hospital district for your individual property. So this is the hospital district requisition. So you can see all of them on there at 307,191, which is an increase over the year. But overall, the requisition is only going up across all of the regional district by 69,300. So not a lot of change in the hospital district budget this year. So just the standard thing, we're in the consultation phase, and part of that is presenting municipalities and regional districts. So I raced down here from West Bench, where I did the first part of West Bench community, and then tomorrow night it's to Summerland for the folks out in Falder and Meadow Valley and places I've never been to yet, because I'm new to this part of the Okanagan. I'm sure I'll get there. But if you have feedback, certainly you can provide it to us, you know, via your representative or calling me or sending an email. But we're happy to have your feedback, and thank you very much for the opportunity to take some of your time tonight. I'm happy to try and field your questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Sure, I have one question. I've asked about 3 months ago for previous year budgets for some of the shared services that we have, and have seen nothing. And I'm wondering, is that something that you can provide when I ask for budgets for the last 5 years?
I can certainly try to get them to you. I know I have the budget, obviously the budget for this year, say for the...
That I did get.
Yeah, that one I passed, I think, on, but we can dig up the other ones, because certainly they exist. Our budgeting software is quite good. You can attach these documents to it, and it's just, I don't know how rigorous someone was to attach the things, and if not, it's just a matter of digging through the files. But if you have that request, certainly, if you want 5 years.
I sent the request through the corporate officer. I'm sure she'll follow up.
Yeah, no, and we'll get you that. I know I saw it just recently, I think, and that's why I fired off the museum, not the museum, Venables, the theater. Getting Soyuz mixed up, they're the ones with the museum, which is another shared sort of project between us and the regional district. But we have that information, so it's just a matter of pulling it together for you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Have a safe drive home.
Yes, well, the roads are good.
Nice to have you there. So just, if I may, in that 5.9 million, in the hospital district budget, we have our close to 1 million still sitting in there, ready to go through this year.
Oh, yes, the 970.
Yeah. There it is.
Alrighty. Moving into bylaws. Solid waste services amendment bylaw 1292.03. I will refer to the corporate officer for.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Solid Waste Services Amendment Bylaw 129203 is before council with the recommendation to receive for second and third reading, and then to bring it forward for adoption to our next meeting. The Solid Waste Services Bylaw, as a little bit of a background, was originally adopted in 2011 to establish garbage recycling and yard waste for the town. In August of 2018, the bylaw was amended to bring in the fees for the introduction of the automated cart program. Unfortunately, we had missed a resolution that was passed by council on November 17th, whereby council resolved that starting in 2019, that the user fees for garbage, recycling, and yard waste be increased by $5 per year to the end of the contract of 2025. So the amended Schedule A to this amendment bylaw outlines the fees for the programs that we offer to residents. I show the 2018 fees, and then for 2019, that shows the change in fee through to 2025. So this is, and then there was no change on page 3 and your page 6 of 6 on your iPad. That's just the automated card change out fees. There's been no change to those fees. Those are set fees right now for council, for residents. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions, council? Seeing none, the motion
Move the recommendation.
for council is to give first, second, and third reading of the solid waste amendment bylaw 1292.03, and that adoption be scheduled for February 11th, 2019.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Benjamin, seconded by Councilor Schwarzenberger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Next item under bylaws is the adoption, delegation of local government authority and personal responsibilities. The motion before council is to adopt the delegation of local government authority and personal responsibilities bylaw 1379. Any discussion? Do I have a mover? Councilor Benjamin, the seconder. Councilor Rice. Any discussion? Seeing none, call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And the last item under bylaws is the cemetery bylaw for adoption. Motion before council is to adopt the cemetery bylaw 1381. Any questions, discussion?
I'll move adoption of cemetery bylaw 13.
Moved by Councilor Mattis, seconded by Councilor Schwarzenberger. Further discussion, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Moving to correspondence. Refer to the corporate officer for some comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. The correspondence report before council this evening has 3 items in particular for direction. The first one is a query from the Aberdeen Publishing, South Okanagan, the South Oliver Chronicle. They had invited council to participate as a partner in the 2019 Oliver Chronicle Visitor and Relocation Guide. The rate for a partner is $2,500 for a half-page ad and editorial. I believe we've already submitted the editorial, which I thought was gratis, but maybe I'm wrong. But I did speak to the interim chief financial officer about that amount, and now that I'm thinking about it, he said that there was $5,000 in the budget, that there was no funds allocated, but I was thinking that maybe it's that economic development amount, so I think that may be not the line item to consider, but there may be an option to use it as, in your strategic planning, you talked about promoting the Oliver brand. Maybe we need to put it into budget deliberations. I believe we're already in another publication through the Oliver Tourism Association, so I don't know if it's a duplication of promotion.
Councilor Mattis.
Through the chair, through the mayor. Have we participated in this before? I've seen this guide before.
A new thing?
I believe that I've seen this before on an annual basis.
No, it's sorry.
Tourism relocation guide, there was one last year's paper, I do recall.
But they were doing them together for a while, now they're broken off.
Oh.
So there's multiple in town.
So the answer is basically no, we didn't participate before.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You have a comment, Councilor?
Sure. I do believe that it's the job of the Tourism Association to kind of present us out there in these sort of publications, unless I'm mistaken about that. And the Tourism Association is producing a relocation or some sort of guide similar to this year. That being said, I don't think that we should be left out of any communication, that's official communication going out to the community. But I would see it maybe more in the form of like a welcome from the mayor and, you know, that sort of commentary.
That's what we provided them, was a bit of a welcome. They asked for that. I guess my comment just quickly was around if you support this one, is there another one waiting in the wings to support? And is somebody gonna be upset because we supported this one without talking to somebody else? I guess those are the questions that kind of bounce around. Councilor Mattis first.
I I was going to move that we receive and file. Now we can discuss.
Councilor Menzdina?
So I guess what I would say then is that maybe not receiving and filing, but investigating a little further which publications are coming out of our community this year, because it is a bit confusing, and it's like as far as our business goes, we've been a bit confused as well. Like there's multiple requests coming in, but they all seem to be from sources that we would recognize as being sources that have produced these documents before. So I think that we would be wise to know exactly how many are floating around, so that we do have a little bit of a footprint in each of them. But I don't think that necessarily means buying advertising.
The CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did receive on Saturday evening, or afternoon, a request, with regards to the Oliver Parks and Recreation Spring Summer Rec Guide, and possibly putting an ad in that also. So there's guides that are coming out all over where they're looking to sell some advertising, that, you know, has to be considered as well.
Councilor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question would be, what are we advertising?
I know.
I think that if we've been able to do a free, you know, write-up, well, for the mayor, it's not
Yeah.
worth $2,500 to be buying an ad.
No.
I agree.
And when I saw the Oliver Parks and Rec, request, that was a little, the town already supplies through the Parks and Rec budget funds towards this, so to come and then ask if we'd like to buy an ad in it is.
Maybe they could put ours right next to the RUS.
You could share a half page.
Sure.
So, just food for thought.
Got a motion on-
We have a motion that's been seconded, that first and seconded, that we need to vote on that. So if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question on the motion to that council receive and file. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Item I2.
Thank you, Your Worship. The second piece of correspondence is from our Royal Canadian Legion branch, number 97. They are seeking permission to fly their flag at Town Hall during Legion Week, June 24th to 2019.
Questions? Councilor Schwartzberg.
Again, have we done this before for the Legion?
I believe we did last year.
We may have last year, but I know we do, fly the poppy during
Right.
that
Yeah.
particular time, and we have put up the flag for the temple too, the Sikh temple. We've flown their flag for them.
Right. Okay. So that being said, I'll move the recommendation that we grant permission for Royal Canadian Legion number 97 to fly their flag during Legion Week, which is June 24th to 28th.
Second. Absolutely.
Councilor Mass.
Wow.
Any further discussion? Does the town have a flag policy around half-masting and flying different flags for different people and stuff?
We just usually follow, the federal government or the provincial government when it comes to that.
We have a motion to grant permission to the Royal Canadian Legion number 97 Oliver to fly their flag during Legion Week. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item I3.
Thank you, Your Worship. The final matter for thought from council is a notice that we received through our Okanagan Regional Library representative, I believe, seeking assistance to improve e-content for libraries. The recommendation on the notice is that council may participate by communicating with our local MLA and through our social media to encourage residents to communicate with publishers to demand fair access and prices to all e-resources. On the notice, you'll notice that the prices are quite significantly different. That may be a burden to library users.
Questions, council? Comments? I'll make a motion. Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just gonna ask, is this something that you think would take a considerable amount of staff time? Like, I'm just looking at the PDF that they sent, wondering if that's something that could be shared through social media just as is, aside from Steve refers for details, which maybe could be.
That's all I
Maybe
would do.
something.
Yeah, yeah, it's just use their e-notice, and we can communicate with our local MLA through a letter from the mayor.
So we have a motion, council participate by communicating with local MLA and through social media to encourage residents to tell publishers to demand fair access and prices to all e-resources. Do you have a mover?
I'll be happy to make that motion.
Councilor Manis?
I'll second.
Councilor Rice, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question, those in favor? Opposed, the motion carries. So we have three other items, correspondence dated January 15, 2019 from Interior Health Authority, responding to Town of Oliver, correspondence dated December 20th, 2018. We have some correspondence dated January 11th, 2019 from Recycling Council of British Columbia, extending an invitation to the RCBC 2019 Conference on Circular Economy in May 2019. And the last piece of correspondence from Brad Sperling, Peace River Regional District Chair, dated November 29th, 2018, received January 24th, 2019, regarding caribou recovery update to UECM Resolution B116 from Peace River Regional District. Before I call the motion, is there any comments on those three, either one of those three pieces of correspondence, Councillor Schwarzenberg?
Yeah, I just noted on the Interior Health letter, they went through a page and a little bit of preliminary and history and everything, and then in one short sentence said that we have collaboratively identified several short and long-term strategies that I am optimistic will ensure stability and fair financial remuneration for physicians to choose to work in Oliver. And since they went on for a page and a half basically about the history and everything, it would have been nice if they could have expanded on their short and long-term strategies, but perhaps that's to come. I'm sure Councillor Ventimiglia will ask that question at her next hospital meeting.
Councillor Ventimiglia?
Noted the same thing that you noted. The other thing I noted is that they received this letter on January 11th and we had a response on January 15th, so that's actually really quite good turnaround time. So this letter didn't have a motion attached to it, but I would like to suggest that we send a letter in reply, thanking them for their letter. You know, and you kind of want to believe that things are happening the way that they say that they're happening, but without any sort of priorities attached or identified there. We don't know. It would take us hearing from our local doctors again to find that out. So I would suggest that we just thank them for their information, and look forward, you know, sort of reiterate that 24-hour, 7-day-a-week access to our emergency department is important to our community and to our surrounding communities, and that we look forward to hearing about these short and long-term strategies in the near future. Because what I did note in that long preamble is that there's a bunch of stuff that's history, you know, so not to read too much from it, but the medical staff resource plan is reviewed at each of the sites, and then it goes on to explain how it's reviewed, and this is done every single year. And then, once again, pointing out that physicians working within the umbrella of IH are independent practitioners, and they manage themselves. We keep saying this over and over, but at the same time, we have those independent contractors that are participating in this study year after year, coming to us and saying they remain unhappy. So I'm cautiously really long way of saying, I think we should write a thank you letter with a little bit of follow-up.
Should we not nail their feet to the floor and ask them when they expect to implement?
Or when we could get an update from them or something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah, or when do you expect to?
When do you expect to share the strategies?
Yeah.
Give us a date.
Sure.
That's what I wrote down. I have drafted a motion. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
Thank you. That council directs staff to correspond with Interior Health Authority, thanking them for their letter and reiterate the 24-hour service, and to receive additional information on their short and long-term strategies.
That's good.
Because otherwise, we're just dancing around.
I'll
Let's
move
leave
that,
it.
I'll move that recommendation.
Counselor Schwarzenberger
I'll
moved,
second.
seconded by Counselor Rice. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the motion. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And on the second and third pieces of correspondence, put forward a motion that those pieces of correspondence weekly mail be received. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to reports, the year-end summary for 2018. Corporate Officer, CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. We brought back the year-end summary because there were some items that were missing on the December report, and we also corrected the one item from the November report with regards to the incorrect number that was placed in the value for the houses for the Sherdals on the one area. It was the lower price. It was just a hitting the wrong number of keys when they were inputting that. Hopefully we won't have those kinds of issues as we now are able to use the VADM system to generate these reports over the manual system that we have been doing for the last year.
Thank you, CAO. Any questions from council? I have a motion that the building permit activity year-end summary for 2018 be received. Councilor Benjamin. Seconder, Councilor Mattis. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next, reports from council, starting with Councilor Benjamin.
On Tuesday, January the 15th, I attended my first Heritage Society meeting. I didn't get to stay for the whole thing, but what I was there for was, there was a lot going on. And one of the things that was passed to me to pass through to the rest of us is that they're quite anxious to get their heritage bylaw rolling, the one that we discussed a while ago about looking to see if we can get designation for the town hall, and that's a good thing. Thursday, January the 17th, I was at the Regional District for meetings all day, and then at the South Okanagan Immigrant and Community Services Building and Petition for a board meeting as well. Saturday, January the 19th, I attended the, Mr. Curving mentioned it earlier, 100-day countdown clock reveal at the Penticton Regional Hospital. Opening day is scheduled for the 29th, so that's pretty exciting. They've got a countdown clock rolling in the main area, main lobby. Sorry? April 29th. Tuesday, January the 22nd, I was at a South Okanagan Similkameen Rural Healthcare Coalition meeting in Caramias. And from Wednesday to Friday this past week, 23rd to the 25th, I was at LGLA in Kelowna with Councilor Rice. There were quite a few great presenters after things kind of got rolling. The first night was a bit of a mishmash. Most all of the speakers couldn't arrive due to fog. But they sorted things out the next day. We had presentations on a wide variety of topics, and I feel like I've probably been presented on most things before, but was most likely a deer in the headlights 4.5 years ago, so I absorbed a bit more this time. But on role clarity, practical tools for orderly and focused meetings, that sort of thing. And I was invited to participate in a panel as well, so sharing hints and tips from our previous term, again on role clarity and council cohesion. And Friday the 25th, I was with the rest of council in our planning session, and that's the end of my report.
Councilor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Monday the 21st, I was at the Parks and Rec general meeting. Friday the 25th, I was at the strategic planning meeting with everyone else here. And I would just like to encourage citizens of the town of Oliver, if you have a Facebook page, like the Town of Oliver Facebook page, or if you have a Twitter account, follow the Town of Oliver on Twitter, and that way you'll have really timely access to town information for things like the recent snowstorm that backed up garbage delivery on the Friday. It was done on the Saturday. So I know it's picked up by the media outlets, but sometimes those are a little slower. So if you like the Town of Oliver Facebook page, or you follow the Twitter page, you're going to get the information as soon as it's published. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor Schwarzenberg. Councilor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. So along with Councilor Ventimilla, January 23rd to 25th, I attended the LGLA, the Local Government Leadership Academy Conference. So some of the highlights for me being new, I think somebody made a comment about drinking from the fire hose. That was very apt. So learning about local partners, local government law, overview of the RDOS, public hearings, working with Indigenous communities, media relations, and also networking with other local partners, other councillors and mayors and directors. And then January 25th via Skype Skyped into the strategic planning session, along with today's meetings earlier today. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Councilor Grace. Councilor Bass?
Thank you, Your Worship. The strategic planning on the 25th, and then today's meetings, and then I'd like to give council and staff the heads up that I will not be attending the meeting on the 11th of February.
Thank you, Councilor Mattis. Last meeting, I forgot to mention that I did my first Citizens Patrol on January 5th, which was a very interesting evening. January 5th. January 18th to 20th, we had our Bantam home hockey tournament. Went off without a hitch. It was a good success. January 25th, strategic planning with the rest of council. January 26th, Citizens Patrol the Procrastinator dinner that they hold every year at the hangar. So that was pretty interesting. Nice to see. There's a lot more people involved, and a lot of credit seems to be to the vehicle that this town provided. Has really spurred some interest in the patrol as well. And today I had an opportunity to meet with Sue Kordoff and Sudas Indian Man Chief Clarence Louis. Good meetings. Upcoming meetings, tomorrow, January 29th, 3 p.m., special open budget deliberations, and follow-up budget deliberation meeting on Wednesday at 3 p.m. if required. Monday, February 11th, 2019, 5 p.m., Committee of the Whole, and February 11th at 7 p.m. regular open council meeting. Active mayor for January and February is Councillor Schwarzenberger. Opportunity for questions from the public. Nothing today. Alright. Adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Councillor Price. Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Watch this later. I was actually just twirling it.
Just about.
And no, you thought I made a motion.
Oh.
I mean, I would have been happy to anyway.
Oh, I see.
but it's like-
That would be great.
It just kind of sticks up here, kind of flip it around.
When you do that, I'm thinking.
Well, the other guy, I have to hit him.
Well,
I can take him, and he's-
Sorry,
he's doing-
some of us got hit down the golf ball when we were 7. Hello.